And good morning. It's a Wednesday morning, live at 9 here at James Phillips. And this morning I'm joined by Tina Aaron and Bryan Miller of HARTT. And we're starting off our monthly Wellness Wednesday with HARTT, where we'll have a counselor from HARTT in and take questions from our audience beforehand. If you have questions that you want to send in while we're live, you can type those on the Facebook page as well. And then future episodes, so go ahead and be thinking of questions you may have for counselors. I guess we need to throw out a disclaimer too, guys, that Tina nor myself are counselors, but Bryan is a licensed counselor, but this would not be a replacement for actual counseling, right?
Right. You know, it's almost like those dentist commercials where it's like, services provider, not
right. Yeah, we could speed it up if you want to say it.
Just say it really, really fast.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're in crisis, you need to go to the ER or call 911 or 988.
Yes. 988 is your friend. You can text, you can call 988 24 hours a day. It is not a chat bot. It is a live person that would be there if you find yourself in crisis.
Right. We did have, and I'll start off with one of the questions that we did have sent in, because I think it kind of starts as a good topic, is how a person said, how do you know when you should take the step to see a counselor?
I think the first thought I have is, if you're considering it, the odds are that it's a good idea. If the thought has occurred to you that it might be helpful, then follow through. Sometimes there's a stigma in terms of counseling that we think that if you need counseling, it's for something, a huge crisis, or you're in a really bad headspace, or you're suicidal, or, in some dire strait situation. But realistically, we see people at HARTT, other counselors, and see people from any place to, hey, I just am having a hard season right now, to those times of crisis and, bigger diagnosable mental health situations. Sometimes it's temporary. And so if the thought has occurred to you that counseling would be helpful, that's when I would say, yes, chase that.
Yeah. Tina, anything you could add to that? Or?
Well, I think that we offer like free consults. So if you're thinking this is not for me, call us. We'll give you 15 minutes with Bryan or one of our other. We have 7 licensed counselors. Come by. We'll give you a tour. We're very open. I give tours all the time. We're having our walk-in clinic starting October 6th. You might want to start there. Come for our free clinic and come by. We have several different support groups that we have. You might want to come to a support group. Right. So if you've got a concern, we've got something going on. We want you to feel comfortable.
Right.
Well, therapy by design is short term. It is not designed to be forever. And so it's kind of like we get to come alongside you and work through and walk through this season with you. And so it doesn't mean that you'll need it for the next year. You may need 4, 5, 6 sessions. You may think, okay, I've worked through, I have some coping skills. I've got some techniques in my back pocket now to deal with grief, depression, anger, anxiety, sadness, whatever leads us to the table that day. And so like she said, I think the walk-in clinic for us is a great starting point.
Yeah.
If someone's like curious to what we offer.
Well, and I think that when somebody is giving thought to they need to see a counselor, they probably they're going through something to have that thought. But a lot of times when we're going through those things, we do think, oh, I'm going to have to talk to somebody forever. For the rest of my life, I'm going to have to go, and that's like you said, that's not what it's all about.
Not at all. And it would be, that we start with the end in mind. We begin with the end in mind. And so we are starting to the point of finishing and discharging therapy, because we don't want to develop a dependency. Therapy is not your emotional support friend for life.
Right.
It is to walk you through, give you the tools that you need, and, kind of push you out of the nest towards a life where you are self-sustaining.
And some people, depending on the situation, some people may need therapy once a week. It may be once a month, maybe once every couple months or something, I guess.
It could be. And, we usually aim for the idea of, let's try and lean into a weekly situation for a shorter period. But every situation is different. Every approach, every hope is different. Their schedules are different. But it might be.
Yeah. before we came on the air, you were talking about one of the main things that you guys hear initially and a lot is depression. And what's the difference between depression and sadness or things like that?
Yeah.
You want to speak to that some?
Yeah. So sadness is temporary. Sadness is caused by there's an external factor. There's a trigger. You know, I am sad because James called me something before we went on the air.
Yeah,
I am
I
sad
did.
because he called me something really ugly. It's not mentionable, but I'm sad because this morning I had an argument with my kids. I'm sad because this morning, you know, something happened. There's an external trigger or thought, and it could even, you know, grief can affect depression and sadness. You know, both can. But the biggest way that I delineate between the two with folks is depression doesn't always have a trigger. Depression can just be, and we don't know why, but some of us are just more hardwired for depression. You know, and so you can have it where depression is something you carry and you fight for life. And then sometimes it is due to, again, a trigger. You know, there is a season that's caused a temporary type of depression. You know, a divorce, a loss, a change in your world, a job loss, a death in your family, someone you care about, that can trigger a place to where you're just in a bad headspace, and it's pretty, I don't want to say permanent, but longer lasting. And we went to go speak, Tina and I went to Curry Middle last week, and I asked them that question. I said, hey, what's the difference in depression and sadness? And a little boy, he was 9 feet tall, a 8th grade boy said, sadness makes it hard to do, depression makes it hard to do anything. And I said, say more. And he was like, getting out of bed, taking care of yourself, making sure you take a shower, making sure you feed yourself. You know, depression, and when he nailed that, and I thought, depression is that. Depression makes it hard to function.
Yeah.
He was great. He was like, things are heavier than they should be. Everything's heavy.
Yeah.
You
know, and I always tell people the thing
Sounds
about
like a
depression.
kid who's been there.
It absolutely does, or maybe experiencing his family.
Right.
I always tell folks that, you know, depression is designed to keep you in a state of depression. Depression wants to keep you from doing the things that pulls you out of depression. It wants to keep you from going outside, from taking care of yourself, from seeing friends. You know, depression wants you to isolate, and realistically, those are the things that help you to feel better when you're in a season of depression. Whenever someone comes in, and I primarily see adolescents. That's my sweet spot. I see a few adults, but we have folks that specialize in adults a little bit more than I do. But whenever someone comes in and they're in a season of depression, usually I'll ask them some super simple questions. How do you sleep? Not great. How much caffeine do you consume in a day? And they're like, well, I had 3 Red Bulls this morning. You know, and that a lot of times caffeine can lead to higher anxiety levels too. And then I'll ask them things like, when's the last time you've been outside? And they're like, I go to school, and I go in my house, and I put on my VR headset, and I put on my, and then I go to bed, and I get up, and I do it again. I'm like, hey, touch grass.
Right. Yeah.
Let's do some of the things that help us to feel better. Because, again, depression pulls us to where we don't want to do those things that would, help us to defeat that season of depression.
And
Right.
Bryan and some of our other therapists, we're downtown Jasper, so we have beautiful Main Street, beautiful area, and many times, if the weather's okay, in Alabama, you just gotta
Yeah.
go.
We got about 6 weeks where it's not
Right,
cold or hot.
yeah.
They'll take their clients out,
Mm-hmm.
and they get some vitamin D, they get some go outside, let's walk around, let's talk and walk and go to the park nearby or whatever.
Yeah. I think those are some things that people don't think about as far as depression goes.
Absolutely.
Especially just the getting out.
Yeah.
And like you talked about the isolation, it's never going to get better if you isolate yourself.
Right. Depression grows in isolation.
And I think with coming to, if someone was coming new to counseling, also to understand it, while Bryan's great, you might not connect with Bryan.
Absolutely.
So we have, again, 7 therapists in total. We have men and women in different specialties. So, we don't want you to continually to change, because then you're repeating your story a lot, and that could be, re-traumatizing. But
Right.
you definitely need to find a therapist that you connect with and that you kind of click with, and that makes a difference too.
What would you say is the, and I know there's not a proper time period, but what would you say is a given time period of, hey, see this person for this amount of weeks and give them a shot and then change somebody else? Is there?
I usually ask for 6. You know, when someone comes in and we say, hey, let's give it a shot, because again, even though it's not a friendship, in that room we're 2 people,
Right.
and 2 people don't always jive, and they don't always get along, and it's not always your person. And you may be looking for a specific personality or demographic. I often tell students that I work with or people that I work with, I am a male therapist, and so if you need a female therapist, I cannot be that for you.
Right.
And
yeah.
so that's totally
you can
okay.
try really hard.
So I could try really hard,
Yeah.
but it's totally okay to advocate for what you need, and we want to celebrate that. So if that's the idea of, I need a therapist who does this or who is this or thinks like this or even just temperament, hey, that's okay. And so I would often say, hey, give us 4 to 6 weeks and just see how it goes. If we're not feeling better, if we're not feeling more comfortable, then let me help you find your person.
Right.
You know, and I had in my placement when I was finishing my degree, I was in the county schools, and I had a girl, and I give that spiel in almost every initial session. And she said, she gave me some very specific demographics she was looking for in a therapist. And she lives in Oakman. And I said, let me see if I can't help you find what you're looking for. And she left, and I felt a little panicky, thinking, I don't know that I'm going to find what she's looking for in Oakman, you know,
Right,
or
yeah.
that could. And I sent a text to a friend, hey, I'm looking for a therapist that fits these demographics and is this community and this background. And they said, nah, good luck. And then I sent a second text, and they said, hold on, I've got a phone number for you. And I ended up calling, and I can't remember her name. It's been several years. Calling her, and she lives in Tuscaloosa, and she worked in Summerton, I think. And so she drives through Oakman on the way home and was able to see this kid.
Right.
And so I thought that the long and short of that was it was a Christmas miracle that I found her.
Yeah.
But more specifically, I felt proud of the kid for finding the person that she needed. She knew what she needed, and she was her own advocate. And it wasn't me.
Right.
And so there's someone. So a good therapist will say, if I'm not your person, let me help you find your person.
Right. And I'm sure there's sometimes where a person comes in and on first meeting,
Absolutely.
they're just like, this is not the person.
This is not my guy.
But it's not going to hurt your feelings.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You know, and
Because I do think that patients worry about that. They're
absolutely.
like, oh, if I don't go back, it's gonna hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing.
Or sometimes if they, sometimes, again, with the idea that therapy is short term, all right, we are trying to work ourselves out of a job with each person.
Right.
We want to not be relied on and needed. It's more, you've got this. Sometimes when they do like you, they get to a point where they're in a good headspace and they don't need therapy anymore, and they're worried to tell you that.
Right, yeah.
Because it feels kind of like, well, I really like Bryan, and he's my guy, or I really like Mary Alex or Tiffany or Alexander or whoever, but I think I'm done.
Yeah.
And so, there's hard conversations you can have like that where, and I always tell folks, I'm like, I want you to break up with me. I want you to
Yeah.
get to a point where you got to go see other people, or no, really not other people, but
Yeah.
for the illustration's sake.
That's when you guys
and
should
that's
have
the hope.
a bell to ring. or
Yeah.
something like that.
You graduated,
Yeah.
you did
Yeah.
it. So I had a kid when I was at Jasper High School before this. I was working through the Capstone Clinic there, and I had a kid who would often tell people, I'd see her in the hallway and she'd be like, that's my therapist, but I graduated therapy already.
Right.
So
But that's gonna make you proud, though.
absolutely. That felt like one. I'm like, can I put that on my LinkedIn? Can I
Right, yeah.
wear that as a badge? That felt
Especially with
great.
a teen. I mean, I've been through teenage girls and still
Yeah.
going through them. To get a teenage girl to say something positive is amazing.
It
sometimes.
can be hard. It can be, and in that setting, sometimes it went from, because in any time working with kids, and I imagine we do it with adults too, we'll say things like, hey, you know, in public, we live in a small town, so I'm going to match your output. If you say hi to me in Walmart, I'm going to give you a high five.
Right.
If you put your head down, I'm going to put mine and walk past you. Like,
Right.
it's just to give you your autonomy and that choice on how you want to respond. I don't ever want to force, especially a kid, to say, "Who was that you were talking to?" "That's my therapist."
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And so at Foothills, I might see 5 or 6 that give me a high five, and I might see 10 or 15 that just kind of nod and keep moving.
Right.
And so I would tell them that. I'm like, in the high school, like, you don't have to have an interaction. Like, you can just keep going. And, you know, so we want to give them that space to how they present. You know, if they're in therapy, that doesn't mean we have to wear a big sign that says I'm in therapy, walking around a high school or in a small town.
Right. Right. And that could, you know, that's easily, you know, done. People can see
Absolutely.
that for sure.
Well, and the big thing, I always tell them, like, if it wasn't for HIPAA and privacy and, you know, the ethical part, if I could walk through and tell you every kid in this building or in this community that I know receives services, there would not be a worry of a stigma of I go
Right.
to therapy.
Yeah.
Because it's so common. We see football players, cheerleaders, cool kids, band kids, drama kids, theater kids, whatever. And, you know, because mental health affects everyone.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to just be cool or not cool or any variation thereof.
Well, I would think everyone needs somebody to talk to,
Absolutely.
you know, and it's amazing how well you guys are providing that for people now. We talked before we came on the air, and before you got here, Tina, about just the growth that HARTT has had, and it's just been, it's not been incremental.
Right.
It's been boom, boom, boom. You know?
Yes, it has. It has. And I always pray. I was telling my daughter this morning, every day I pray the prayer of Jabez. And Anthony, who's my partner, sometimes will say, "Stop praying that."
Yeah.
Because
Right.
it'll say, you know, enlarge my territory. And,
Yeah.
you know,
It's working
it's
too well.
working, you know, slow down the prayers. But we are very blessed. And I think we saw 92 or 93 people for counseling last week alone, and that's just one part of what we do. You know,
Wow.
not the other components of other departments we have. So, and we have a pretty big log right now that I know. Yesterday morning when I saw Bryan, he was going through staffing, and last night at 8:00 and 8:30 when I saw him again when I was back there, he was still staffing. So, you know, we get calls every day. Things come through our website every day. So I would tell people, we're getting to you. We're getting there. It's just
Yeah.
a lot of
Right.
people, and we're
Well, and that math is pretty easy. If you had 90 people in a week and you've got 7 counselors,
Right.
that's a lot of people per day for each counselor.
Yeah.
Well, and that's 6. 7 starts in a few weeks.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And so
Yeah.
so that's a big, you know, we're blessed really and lucky to be able to help the amount of people we're
right.
helping.
And you have to not overload your therapist, you
Yeah.
know, because they're taking in that all day long themselves,
Right.
you know, and they're taking in all those stories, and they're pouring out of themselves, every person, you know, something different. And plus, we're leading groups and, you know, support groups and different things. And Bryan and Tiffany do a lot of our juvenile work. So, you know, we can't just overload them either.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we have to worry about their mental health too. So,
Now, I have a question regarding therapist mental health. With everything that you hear every day, how often do therapists need therapy?
I will tell folks that I don't trust a therapist who hasn't had some therapy. Now
Right.
that's a hot take. So, you know, I don't know that everyone would co-sign that, but I have had seasons where I have seen someone, and I will have a season again at some point. I have had seasons where, you know, you're working through your own stuff and your own situations, and then I've had seasons where just a lot of heaviness at work, and I'm like, I need to talk to someone about this.
Yeah.
And so I think most therapists I know would say that they've seen somebody for some point at least, or at some point at least, for a short term.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
It's
think,
kind of like, you know, what was the old commercial where it's like, I'm not only a salesman for
oh, yeah. Hair club for men.
Hair Club for Men,
Yeah.
but I'm also a user, which
Yeah.
obviously I'm not. But
Yeah, me either.
but you know, I think that it shows that we believe in what we do if we also partake in that. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. You ever heard that parable of the starving baker? You know, like bakery becomes successful because they've got some great bread or whatever specific thing, and so he starts working longer hours, and he starts skipping breakfast, starts skipping lunch, starts skipping dinner, starts to waste away, even though he works in a bakery.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that if we're not careful and we don't manage our self-care. And we have some of our therapists who are so good at that. One of ours, you'll see it on her calendar every day, and that means that she's going to leave and run to the gym for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And if we are slammed, she's going to leave and go to the gym for 30 minutes because she brings the best version of herself back from that.
Yeah.
And so.
And we encourage peer support too.
Absolutely.
And they're all close with each other, and we're so thankful for our therapists. They are wonderful people in general.
Mm-hmm.
They love each other. They appreciate each other and the work they do, and so they can meet, they can talk. Sometimes they're in each other's offices back and forth. So, some good peer support is important too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I imagine a bad person or a bad therapist wouldn't last very long at HARTT.
No.
They're not gonna.
No, because we are on mission.
Right.
And we say yes and we help people. And so, no, they would not. They would, it's one of those where it's like you keep up, or else you would fall off. So no, all of ours are really, really good.
Now, you mentioned the gym for one of the therapists. How important is exercise in mental health as well?
Yeah, being active is huge. Helps to work through anxiety, depression, anger. Just the better we feel about ourselves, the better that we feel mentally. And so, a lot of folks I know, it's like you can see. In fact, I was talking to somebody a few days ago, and they were talking about how they can see a decline in their mental health when they're not actively running. And it's not so much about losing weight or working off, a big lunch, as much as it is just keeping themselves clear. And so I think finding whatever it is for you that you're active. Again, the benefits are not just the active part, but it's being outside. We are not made to be inside all day.
Right.
And I think the fresh air, the sunlight, that vitamin D matters. So I think it's really, really important.
Well, and you mentioned even touching grass.
Yeah, touch grass.
It's a good thing to go out bare feet.
Absolutely.
And actually touch that grass.
Yeah, grounding.
Yeah.
And that is, I a couple years ago went to a training that I didn't want to go to, if I'm being very honest. It was a thing I got kind of signed up for. And I was there with a friend, and we went to a mindfulness workshop, and I wasn't excited about it. And one of the things they talked about was grounding. And I listened, and I was in the back of my mind thinking, that sounds silly. Like, I'm thinking, like, the idea of walking outside and putting your bare feet in the grass feels like something like a guy with like a gray ponytail,
Right.
and like a karate outfit would say, and he'd be like, now stand.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, okay. But then this was in the fall of 2019. So then the spring of 2020 hits.
Yeah.
And the world's on fire. And everything is scary. And I am seeing people younger than me who are, in COVID and all that happened, and all the world relations at that point. And I, for the first time in my life, felt some panic at times. And so I started going outside and putting my feet in the grass and grounding. And I looked like a silly person. I remember my kids being like, what are you doing, Dad? I'm like, I don't know. And if it's a placebo effect, then so be it.
Right.
If it works, and if it's a placebo, if I look crazy and I'm not hurting anybody and I feel better, so be it.
Exactly.
And so, that was a big, number one, I had to cut out media for a little bit because I was overwhelmed with the amount of bad news I was taking in.
Yeah.
And
I
it'd be
worked
easy
in
to feel like
media,
that right
and
now.
I had to cut out media too.
Yeah, it would be easy to feel like that currently.
Right.
Of that we need to limit our intake.
Yeah.
And so that was number one. Number two, I practiced that grounding exercise. I touched grass. And I realized somebody may hear that and think, that sounds silly. And that's okay. That's, if it works for you, it works for you.
Right, yeah. Well, I've had so many friends offer different advice for different things when I've gone through things. And
Right.
Initially, my reaction is usually, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then I'll try it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, this did help. You
Right.
know?
And a lot of it's all relative.
Yeah.
It's what works for you.
Yeah, and it
And
is.
so I have people who will come in certain certain techniques or interventions work for them. And then
Yeah.
I have some that are like, that breathing thing you told me about was stupid. I'm
Right,
like,
yeah.
okay, well then let's try another thing.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that didn't work for you, but it works for a lot of, because there's no one size fits all in mental health. It's tailoring it to you
Right.
and what works for you. And so we just keep trying until you have a trick in your back pocket that works.
Yeah.
I would say definitely try to get some sunlight though.
Yes.
For sure. And one thing I think we can talk about in the next few months is gonna be like the season's coming up. And
Oh, definitely.
it's
Yeah.
dark when you go to work, sometimes dark when you get home, and you have that seasonal, affect disorder, and people get depressed during, the winter months. And so how can we, prevent that maybe, and how can we mitigate that? So I think that would be a great thing to talk about, to
Yeah.
prepare
Absolutely.
people that know that's a struggle for them.
I get depressed in the summer months because I'm always sweating and hot, and typically an air conditioner breaks for some reason.
Always. That's the point right there.
Guys, I want to remind you, this is our Wellness Wednesday with HARTT. We've got Tina Aaron and Bryan Miller of HARTT here talking with us. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back here on Live at 9 with James Phillips on WJLX. All right, we are back here on Live at 9 with James Phillips. We're joined by Bryan Miller and Tina Aaron of HARTT. And before we went to the break there, we were just talking about, we talked about a lot of different subjects.
Right.
You brought up even COVID time.
Yeah.
And I think that's when a lot of people first started seeing that they needed to speak to somebody or they needed to see a mental health professional was during that time because the world changed so much.
Absolutely. I also think we're still kind of living in the repercussions of that time too, to where some mental health crisis we're seeing is still due to folks were home for a long time, and at that point I was working at Daybreak, our local domestic violence shelter, and I remember thinking, I I don't know how much attention was put on the fact of like homes with some domestic violence or some complicated situations there, and so the home was great for mine and my boys. Me and my boys went on hikes and we went on long bike rides, and we, you know, I think there's not an inch of Heritage Hills that we didn't walk.
Right, yeah.
It was almost. I often tell people, pandemic times was almost a gift
Yeah.
of time that I would not have normally had with my kids. But there are people who their situation would not have been like that, where being home and not getting the break to go to school, to go to work, to get out, could have been hard. And
Right.
it made their life a lot more difficult. And I think we're still seeing the repercussions of that some years later, of kids who were in tense situations at home and not getting the reprieve from 8 to 3 to go to school. And so I think we're still seeing some of that. I know that education, that they talk a lot about that COVID generation of kids, and I think it's the same within the world of mental health too,
Yeah.
and adults as well too.
Yeah.
I generally think through the lens of kids, because that's my sweet spot and preference of working with that demographic. But families in general, I think that was a hard time. So I think we're still walking through some of the tail end of those repercussions.
Yeah, I
in
think so. I mean,
2025.
anybody who lived through that,
Yeah.
that you always have it in your mind. Everything that you saw, everything you went through, people you lost, all those kind of things.
It's what we call a collective trauma,
Yeah,
because we all experienced it together.
right.
And, you had people that could not say goodbye to their loved ones who
Yeah.
were in the hospital.
Yeah.
And how do you get through that? And then that instills fear in other people that get sick. What if this happens to my loved one? What happens to me? And it's hard to get through some of those things.
Yeah, definitely so. Now, what are some other things that HARTT has coming up? I know you guys had some notes that you wrote down. So
Well, the big one, and I think Tina mentioned it, we've got we are starting a free mental health clinic. And we want to be clear that it's not a crisis clinic. It is if you're considering that you might need mental health help. It is if you, maybe if you find yourself in a place where there's been a barrier for you to receive mental health services, we want to remove the barriers with the clinic. We want to say more yeses than nos with the clinic. And we're launching and trying to mitigate or kind of keep it manageable at first. So we're launching to where we will see the first 10 on the first one, and that's going to be on Monday, October 6th at our office. HARTT's located in the bottom floor of Synovus, and it's from 9 to 12, but we're recommending that you guys get there early if you're listening and you have interest and you want to make sure that you get a spot, because we'll have our therapist on site. We've also developed a chaplain team that will be there. We have some of our friends from Glory Fellowship, from Desperation Church, from First Nazarene, from St. Mary's Episcopal Church, and Jasper First Methodist, and Blooming Grove. Tina knew that I was going to not remember the name, so she was ready with it. We've developed a chaplain team that will rotate. Some of them will be on site for each time we have the clinic, and they are rock star pastors and ministers that we're super excited to have on the team with us. So, some may come in and they just need a little bit of hope, and hope is not clinical.
right.
And so hope is something that our pastor friends can help share. They can listen, they can guide, and then they would know if it was something more severe to kind of call one of us to come in. But that starts Monday, October 6th, and we're super excited about it. We've had our nose to the grind on this one and developing this for months.
Well, I was going to say, you announced it in August or
Yeah,
July?
we've been working on it since the beginning of summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just, we've never done it.
Right.
We wanted to do it right, and it's a lot of coordinating and getting our therapist to clear their schedules for that day. And we're going to start like a soft launch. So it's be the first Monday of every month, and we'll gauge interest. If we get a lot of people, we will start doing twice a month.
Right.
That kind of thing. And again, it's all free. So that is 4 or 5 therapists for 4 hours that, we had to fund them,
Right.
to do the free work. So again, we look for funding and grants to help us cover them so they can do the work. We do not do medication. So kind of just what Bryan was talking about, it's not a crisis situation, or if you've just been released from the BMU, to come here to manage medication or something. It's not gonna be that.
Right.
You can come 3 times a year for free. And we should be able to, if you need more than that, then let's line you up.
Right.
And come in a more consistent, manner. The other thing is we're gonna have a resource coordinator. We've been gathering resources, clinical resources, as well as local community resources. So if you come there and you have a need, you're gonna leave with something. You're gonna leave with something in your hand that says you can go here to get this, whether it be economic support or food or whatever, or something clinical. If you came for depression that day, you're gonna, or grief or anxiety or stress or working with your teenager or your
Right.
child, or, so we've got all these wraparound things. And then our chaplain team we're so excited about, because again, if you don't get there and you're not our first 10 people, we're gonna try to manage overflow.
Yes.
And use our chaplains to do that. So everybody's had some kind of contact. You leave with some contact. We don't want 1,000 people, because it would scare us.
Right, yeah.
But we just want be another resource for the community. So even if you wanna call ahead, if it's 10 o'clock, you wanna call the office and say, hey, have you seen your 10 people before I come down there?
Right.
That kind of thing. We, do that for sure.
And you could probably schedule them at a later time to
Absolutely.
come by too.
And, the hope is also someone could use this as a way to kind of come and get a feel for us. And they might want to set up to receive services. And they
Right.
might go, hey, I was with Mary Alex, and she's wonderful. How can I get on her schedule? And we
Right.
go, let's figure that out, and let's work that piece out. We also have we work with our friends at Capstone. And so the Capstone, one of their outreach folks, is going to be at the first clinic to help. If someone needed help getting insurance or Medicaid, she will have a table set up at the first one. I don't know that I told you I got that locked down until
That's
this
great
moment.
news. Thank you. That's great
Breaking
news.
news.
Breaking
Yeah, a
news.
lot of
Tina
times.
looked at me like, you
Yeah.
didn't mention
That's
that.
great.
We had worked on that, but just to kind of throw that one out, and we're excited about that. The community has been really quick to say yes to
Yeah.
this too. Like, all of our pastor friends said yes. Not one of them, when I called, was like, let me get back to you. Let me see what my schedule has. They said, love that. Let's do it.
And what we're
Right.
gonna do with our pastor friends, we're having a little luncheon training with them,
Yeah.
too, because it's not, they're not trying to get you saved.
Right, and that's
No.
what I was gonna bring up. A lot of
Yes.
people going through whatever they're going through, they may be apprehensive about coming in if you mention
Right.
Right.
pastor friends, but they're not there for that. They're there just
No.
to provide some emotional support.
Right, and that would be presented as an option to them.
Right.
There would be nothing forced. You would not have to go and talk to them, and they know that the goal is not. The goal is some hope. The goal is a listening ear. The goal is maybe a little bit of, what if you tried this, or pointing towards a resource in the community. And when I've talked to all of them, every one of our chaplains agreed to and kind of already had the mindset of, the hope is not to pray you through Romans Road or anything like
Right.
that. The
Yeah.
hope. Now, if someone came in and they met with one of them and said, hey, could you pray for me?
Oh, yeah.
Please do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example.
Please do.
Pastor James, from the Methodist church right across the street from us, is our consistent chaplain on duty. And a few Fridays ago, I was there, and a few of my, and Leslie was there, a few people were there, and a young lady walked in. And we don't have therapists there normally on Fridays. We have some on Sundays, but she walked in and was in a pretty serious situation. And we had no therapist, but we didn't want her to not get some services. And so she actually left. And we called her to come back. She had not went far, just a few minutes. And in the meantime, we called Pastor James, and he came right over. We also got Bryan on the phone, and he came right over. So the chaplain started, and then they could kind of tag team with Bryan. So we're already using those services
Right.
just to help support. And I think one thing also that we see sometimes, like people will call and schedule an intake, like they're having a bad day or a bad moment. They'll schedule an intake. It may be a week or 2 weeks. Sometimes we can get them in that day or a few days, but it may be a week or two. And by the time, and they skip their intake, they don't show up. And what happens is people call in that moment, and then maybe their situation gets better the next day or two, or they feel better. They
Right.
think, I'm over, I don't need to, and they
Yeah.
don't show up. Well, then in a few weeks, something happens again, they're calling back. Well, you've missed your intake that we had an hour and a half set aside for a therapist, So I think for people to, if you schedule an intake, if something's brought you to that point, even if you feel better the next day,
You still need to show
still
up.
Yeah.
follow through.
Yeah.
at least call us back.
Well, and I
and
think
say,
being
"We're coming,
aware
but
of why you
come
why
back."
you might be feeling better.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you're feeling better because you've made some steps in the right direction, and that is not going to last. That relief will fade
Right.
because that initial relief is based on, okay, I'm making a move towards getting help, towards feeling better, towards making life change. And then, you know, so if you think, well, I'm good now, and it's going to circle back.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, making that, and, you know, so once you make that contact, come on in and let's get set and let's get rolling and let's
Yeah.
get some hope and some help.
Yeah. Anything else that you guys have coming up that we need to know about?
Yeah, we have some really neat stuff going. We have been able to partner with our friends at DHR to provide a monthly group for foster parents. We provide services for kids in foster care, for the parents of kids in foster care, for the foster parents, and even for the workers of DHR. But we are starting a monthly. Well, it'll be bi-monthly because we'll do month one will be foster parents, month two will be adoptive parents that will provide a support group. And that started actually last month. And then we are starting a group for cancer patients and their families. And that starts
That's
soon.
maybe the second Wednesday of
Okay.
October. I'll get you the date on that.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
going to be at 2:00 in the afternoons, and that's for people who are experiencing cancer or someone, you know, going through that with their family
Yeah.
member. So it's open. It's going to be hosted through the Clearview Cancer Center in Jasper, but it's going to be open to the public also, and they'll be providing the snacks for our. Alexander will lead that group, so anybody that's dealing with that. I know I've had 2 parents with cancer, and it scared me,
Yeah.
and you know all those things, and so again, some support.
Yeah.
to
Oh,
help you walk
definitely.
through that.
My wife just finished treatment, so
Yeah.
I mean it's a scary thing that
Right.
you're not ready for until you
Right.
are in the middle of it.
Right.
You know.
And then one that I'm really, really excited about. I'm excited about all of the things we offer, the world of foster care and the cancer group as well. But we have started to see just a tremendous amount of kids and families coming in where it's grandparents raising their grandchildren. And so we did some research on that, and we saw that the term generally used is grand families. And so we are starting a grand family support group that starts tomorrow morning at 10. And the hope for that is to provide resources and support and just understanding, because the world changes quickly. I'm 42 years old, and my boys often are like, "No, Dad, this is how this works on the TV now." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Right. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, just, you know, a few years ago, I felt like I was doing that. But the world and technology and culture and, you know, just situations are changing. So language, verbiage. And so
Yeah.
we want to develop a place where grandparents raising grandchildren can feel like they're not alone, because they really are not. And they can be with other people. They can share their wins. They can share their struggles. We can help to resource them, help them understand cultural shifts and, you know, just things that are going on in that world. We can, you know, work through verbiage and lingo and, you
Yeah.
know,
And
TikTok.
that starts tomorrow at.
That starts tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And
Is it
You
gonna
can teach
be-
them what skibbity means. or
we could
something
teach them
like
what
that.
Skibbity, Ohio is,
Is it
and
gonna be
6,
in our
7, and the whole
main
thing.
office or across the street?
It will be across the street from Synovus in the bottom floor of the.
That's the York Lodge.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have our teen center is there, but our
Yeah.
groups meet there too.
Yeah.
So
And we thought that would just be easier access than our part of the building. And so that is across from like if you were at the ATM at Synovus downtown, it is just directly across, 10 a.m. We'll have some snacks and some coffee and some
and
water.
there's heart signs and everything. And I
Right.
think one thing we're talking about too, before we started this program, we're talking about loss and grief. And if you're a grandparent raising grandchildren,
Yeah.
there's a loss of
Absolutely.
you being just grandparent.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I'm grandparent, I'm Gigi, and I'm fun.
Yeah. And you can
And-
just give them back.
Yes.
Yes, and
And-
I can do all those things,
Yeah.
you know, but if I'm raising them, now I'm losing that grandparent
Yeah.
piece of it, you
Right.
know, and I'm now the disciplinarian, and I have all the responsibility and all those things, and that robs a grandparent.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
those kind of things too. So I would really love to see as many grandparents tomorrow,
Same.
and let us love on you and support you in that, you know, because and find other people that's doing the same.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
We have so many grandparents, and we personally at our office have some great grandparents
Yeah.
raising great grandchildren.
Yeah. I mean,
And-
that's
And you know, for me, this one. some of the best work is when it affects you in a personal way, where you can kind of track your story back. I have a heart for foster families because I've adopted my boys from foster care,
Yeah.
you know, and so we have always had a heart for them and for that world. And then I was raised by my grandparents largely, and so I think, gosh, I bet they had a hard time understanding what I was talking about.
Yeah.
You know, that was like the 90s when, you know, the internet is coming in, and my grandpa was like, "What are you talking about?"
Right.
And so I have such a heart for them, and grandparents are so important just in general, you know. And yet, and my kids' grandparents, I don't know what we would do without them.
Yeah.
They are so important to my boys and to Frankie, and that is huge. And so all the more the folks that are day in, day out, they thought they would be done raising kids by this point, but they've made the choice to get back in the thick of it and raise their grandchildren. And we want to come beside them and support them and just give them resources and a safe place to talk about it.
Well, and most of those
be
grandparents
supported.
are people living on a fixed income, and
Right.
you know, they don't have everything in the world to just
Right.
offer kids.
Which would be part of some of that is, you know, there are resources for grandparents raising their grandchildren that we can point them to.
Right.
Mary Alex and I have spent some time kind of digging into that and finding some things of going like, I wonder if they know about this or this or this. And so some of that could truly be just tangible support that
Right.
we can offer and that we can point them towards those resources.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're right at the end of time for today.
Perfect.
And I think it's been a really good first Wellness Wednesday.
That's great. Thank you for letting us hang out.
Coming up, we'll remind people throughout the month with some social media posts and things like that to let people know to send in questions. And then you guys had talked about we may just pick a topic as well and have
Yeah.
a certain topic that people could send questions on, or that us just discuss and that sort of thing. I think that's a good idea too.
Right.
But I appreciate you guys coming by. I think it's been a really good hour.
Well,
Excellent.
we
Thank you for having
appreciate
us.
the opportunity and just the fact that Walker County is open to mental health. I mean, it's huge and it's needed, and let's all work together, you know, to help people heal. You know, that's our whole thing is family, hope, and healing.
Exactly. Well, guys, thanks for listening today on Live at 9. We'll be back tomorrow. Until tomorrow morning, be kind and love somebody, and we'll see you on Thursday morning on Live at 9 with James Phillips. See you then.